The Carbonara was just added to Roblox Jailbreak, and well, I've got to say, I'm pleasantly surprised that this vehicle ended up winning. It was actually a very close contest against the Polaris V8, but overall, I've joined the trading island, and yes, it's actually in the game. You can already buy it, but it actually spawns next to the oil rig, so there's a crate that kind of washed up on the shore, and if you go to the oil rig, you should be able to basically find the Carbonara there. It's going to be basically in a cargo ship container, but yeah, I bought it for 800,000. Now, I will say that most of my money is kind of like before the whole new robbery changes. I haven't discussed that very often, but it is kind of hard to grind cash now. Not in the sense that the robberies are different, it's just it takes a lot longer. So 800,000 is actually fairly a lot now, because you could basically earn like 500k in a day now. It used to be a million, but it's just so much slower to do robberies, and I'm going to be discussing whether the Carbonara is actually worth your time. And well, I'm going to be upfront, if you already have an Aperture and Parisian, you don't necessarily need a Carbonara, and I'm going to be explaining exactly why. So we got the spawn location out of the way. It's next to the oil rig, because I've been saying this over and over again on Twitter or X, and people still can't find the Carbonara, so that way everyone knows where the Carbonara spawns. But basically, I have to say that it's actually fairly decent performance. Now, I didn't expect something like a Javelin, because the Javelin was actually a little bit more expensive than the Carbonara when it first released, but hear me out, it's fairly good performance for a supercar. I got it around 280 miles per hour. If you go around the map, it did hit 300 miles per hour, but on average I was getting about 280 miles per hour, and I will say that the acceleration is definitely in between the Aperture and almost like the Snake. So the thing about the Snake is a lot of people don't actually like it because it just starts at 1.5 million. It actually never took off, which I was pretty surprised about, but the Snake has very good acceleration, just a lower top speed compared to some like the Aperture or Parisian. And the Carbonara feels kind of more like the Snake, but then it actually fixes the problems with the Snake's low top speed. Or I shouldn't say low top speed, but the Snake is just nowhere near as good as the Aperture or the Parisian. And I think if you own all of them, you know exactly what I mean. So let's get that out of the way. If you have a Snake, I actually think that the Carbonara is a very good upgrade, and you would feel right at home basically using the Carbonara over the Snake. Now, comparing the Carbonara to the Aperture and Parisian, I would have to say that they all have their own advantages in some ways, and Carbonara is kind of between the two. Good top speed, but not the best, but it makes up for that with good acceleration. So that's kind of my thoughts on the Carbonara. The design, it's an open roof design, so I really like that, but it doesn't actually have any doors. So going back to the Javelin, one of my favorite parts about it is that it actually does have the doors that open up, but it really is whatever, it's not a big deal. I think that the Carbonara is the first vehicle that is coming to the game besides the Frost Crawler with the new changes to the Jailbreak creations Reddit. So you're no longer going to be having a lot of vehicles with opening doors, mirrors, and stuff like that, because now there's a limit on how many triangles you can have on the vehicles, so it's actually nowhere near as much as you had before, so you have to do a lot more optimization on the builds. But yeah, considering the new triangle limit, which is about 6,000 triangles, I have to say that this vehicle looks really great. Now, yes, you can look into a little bit more detail and you can kind of count the polygons, but it's really no big deal. I think it's a very nice looking vehicle considering the amount of polygons the creator had to work with. And yeah, it's a very nice car. So now let's get into the trading value of things. I'm going to estimate that based on the observations that I found with the Carbonara being very similar to the Aperture and Parisian, and even the Snake, is it's going to start trading at about 1.5 million at minimum. So you're going to make back your investment like right away. It's really no doubt about that. But then I feel it's going to fall in between 1.5 million and 3 million. So I don't really think it's going to go beyond 3 million. Now, here's the thing. I remember getting the Aperture, Parisian, and Snake, and it was a very similar story. They all started at about these ranges because, quite simply, a vehicle that was just purchasable for 800,000 just isn't going to go for much right away, but at minimum you're going to get at least $1 million vehicle and maybe some ads. So the trading filter value is going to be exactly the same as the Aperture or Parisian, and that is literally about 2 million. So that's what the value basically comes from. Now, if I were to guess, the Carbonara would be pretty decent at 2,500,000. It would fit right in, but I would not be surprised if it even went lower than 2 million. I don't know how many people are going to be paying like overpays for the Carbonara right as soon as it becomes limited. So that's what I actually put ranges for the website value right now. So as you guys know, this is on jailbreaktrading.net right now, but I put ranges because I don't want to imply that the Carbonara is 2.5 million when its value is not yet set in stone, but just going off of what I found, it's going to be in between those values. I didn't see anyone disagree. I think most people in my Discord were actually saying the same thing, that it would actually go for about 2,500,000. So that is what I'm going to assume its value is going to be, at least until the end of this year. And so next year, the Carbonara is going to maybe see some spikes, some ups and downs, and we'll just be adjusting for that value after some time passes. But yeah, if you were wanting to get into trading, the Carbonara is a very good vehicle. I really enjoyed using this vehicle during the time I had with it, and it's obtainable right now. So you should get this before December 27th, because otherwise you're going to lose out on basically 1.5 million guaranteed for free. I really don't think you're going to lose money on limiteds like this, because just take a look at the agent. I actually think that the agent was not such a great limited, and yet look at it here, it's still going for like 2,500,000. So there's no reason why you shouldn't get the Carbonara. It's a fantastic new limited. And real quick, I actually wanted to talk about the Polaris V8. I actually made a post that semi blew up. It got a few thousand views on something like X or Twitter, but here's the problem with the Polaris. I only realized maybe later on, and hear me out, I was rooting for the Polaris V8, but there's a big balancing issue with it. The reason the Polaris V8 didn't end up winning is because it's basically a glorified seltzer. So if you've looked on the Jailbreak Creations Reddit, you're going to be able to see it's basically a flying sled that's kind of mixed with a muscle car. And so yeah, I really like the design of it, but then the creator of the vehicle actually contacted me and said that between the two, you should set your expectations a little bit lower. And so that's why we got the Carbonara, because quite simply, it wouldn't make sense if we had basically 30,000 people in the game get a flying vehicle that is basically the equivalent of the seltzer. Now, I would have personally maybe gone for the Polaris V8, but it could have just been nerfed so that way it can't spawn in the mobile garage. But whatever, that's pretty much too far, and I'm not really going to speculate any further. I don't think the Polaris V8 is going to be added anytime soon, because if it were, it would have been this season prize limited, but it was actually the frost color. So yeah, that was actually a surprise to me as well. But I think it has to do with Bad Emo not wanting to add so many flying vehicles to the game, because I will admit they've nerfed the seltzer a lot of times and it's still insanely powerful. You can't really nerf the seltzer any further because it's basically a hover car at its core, and even if it's slow, it's still insane because it's a flying vehicle. You can spawn anywhere, so it's always going to traverse terrain very well. So that's the reason behind the Polaris not being added, and it can all be summarized with balancing issues, but I'm totally not surprised at all. This was kind of expected, and even though I was rooting for the Polaris V8, I'm kind of happy the Carbonara ended up winning. It's basically the best between all the worlds. A very good supercar, and it also has a pretty decent price and great performance. So the rarity pricing, I'm going to put it at about 185 out of 500. This will again kind of fluctuate. I didn't put a range for this one because you can already kind of tell the range between the Jailbreak Trading.net value and duped value. It's going to fall somewhere in between that. So again, it's going between the Aperture and the Parisian and the Snake, and heck, even the Javelin, although the Javelin is way farther up there. I think the Javelin is probably one of my favorite vehicles in the game because it basically is the successor to the Torpedo in a lot of ways, both in new design and performance. The Javelin, I think, actually beats the Torpedo by a few miles per hour. So I'm still going to end up using my Javelin, but I've got to say the Carbonara, for the price, it's really hard to beat. Like, I can't complain about it. If you don't already have a Carbonara, feel free to grind for it. I think it's definitely worth it. You're going to make back your investment. And so, like I said, it's basically what I expected from the new limited in the vehicle. And these are kind of my final thoughts. But if you've been wanting the small boost in train, this is the best option to start off with. Again, 800,000. It's harder to grind that right now because they didn't nerf all the robberies. So my best suggestion is to use one of my VIP servers. If you go to jailbreaktrading.net, you can actually click on the more menu and it takes you to Jailbreak VIP servers, or just look up jailbreakvipserver.com and it'll also redirect you to the same kind of part of the jailbreaktrading.net page. So if you want to grind as a criminal, those are your best options, or you can just buy your own VIP server. It's only like 200 Robux. Well, I've got 3 if you need them, and if you want to play with some other players that are also using jailbreaktrading.net, so that's always an option. Or the other best option is actually to just play on the police team. I found that police team is actually making a lot of money But here's the thing about the police team. You don't want to stay in the same server because you're going to basically exhaust all the bounties and then you're going to end up camping the prison. And so that's not fun for pretty much everyone involved. And yeah, it's just not going to be earning you a lot of money. So the best way you can earn money as a cop right now is actually just hop servers. And I'm not kidding, you're going to make millions and millions very fast. So that's right now the best effective grinding method. I know a lot of people think it's actually the criminal team, but it's surprisingly not, because criminals just got a huge nerf. So that's actually why I don't do grinding streams anymore. I've seen a lot of people ask why I'm not grinding anymore or like grinding 24/7. Well, number one, I basically stopped grinding after the NASCAR update with the NASCAR 75, and I left off at 40 million. I still have 36 million, so it's like I basically just bought the Carbonara. I had 37 million and now I'm at 36 million, 0.5 or something like that. So I definitely don't need any more money. I'm probably stacked enough for the rest of the lifetime of Jailbreak, so that's why I haven't been grinding, because I just absolutely abused all the robberies when they were still obtainable. I mean, seriously, the old robbery system was really fun because you could actually set up an order, so you could do bank, then jewelry, then museum, then power plant. So you could actually stack museum and power plant and then turn those in all at once and then just go in to do the casino. And then as soon as the cargo ship came, you would do the cargo ship, stuff like that. So that's my experience of grinding. I grinded a lot when the old robbery system was here, but then they nerfed the robbery system, and so the game decides what robberies open for you. So half the time I'm actually waiting because the robbery cycles are literally like power plant, cargo ship, and cargo plane. And so you really don't have much of a choice, because when the cargo plane is coming, you either do it or you don't, but at the same time you also have the cargo ship. Or I don't honestly really care about the new robbery system, but all I'm saying is it's actually kind of hard to grind as a criminal now, because yeah, you end up having to go from one side of the map to the other and you don't really have a choice. But basically, if you want this vehicle and you're grinding for it, I would strongly consider being a cop or join a Jailbreak VIP server in order to still grind as a criminal. But that's just kind of my perspective. I think for 800,000, you know, it's a few hours of grinding. I would say maybe 5 to 6 hours of grinding if you're good. And if you don't have the game passes, it's probably going to take even longer. But yeah, it is what it is. I'd say if you earn 1 million, then you're pretty much set. And then you can also get yourself the nice new little motorbike that was added, which I think it was called the Falcon S. So that's also a very good vehicle. It starts at about 150,000. So I honestly can't complain much. But that being said, that's all from me. I'm getting kind of just, you know, carried away here. But Carbonara, I really like it. I think it's a great limited. It's on the website. So I'm not going to make an update video on whether the Carbonara's value is more established or not. Just know it falls in between those ranges. And then when the Carbonara is officially limited, I'm going to narrow down the ranges after I see what it gets in training. But it's very likely in between that. If I were to say it right now, 2,500,000 is kind of the sweet spot for this vehicle, but at minimum, I would assume it's going to make back at least 1.5 million. So that being said, that's my thoughts on the Carbonara. It's a great vehicle, and if you don't own it, I think it's worth adding to your inventory. So I'm going to be working on another video which has the value of every single item in Jailbreak, and so this is definitely going to be included in the video, and we'll see how the Carbonara ends up turning out maybe a few months from now on. But that being said, that's all from me. If you like the video, make sure to like, and if you're new to my channel, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy holidays to everyone.